Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Charles Sabanter, and welcome you guys to another episode of the Dreamerspro Show, where we cover everything from sports, hot topics, classic debates, entertainment, and when we give you guys a fresh perspective on things and how we see them. And today we got a pretty interesting show for you guys, but before we get into it, please make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now, this particular show here, man, I don't even know what to say about it. I really don't know what to say about it. Now, as you guys know, 2 years ago, I think this was back in 2021, some pretty big news happened at ESPN, specifically ESPN First Take. It was a bunch of things. It was the Rachel Nichols story, Maria Taylor's. There were so many different stories. But then there was a Max Kellerman one. As you guys remember, before that, Max Kellerman had been Stephen A. Smith's debate partner on ESPN First Take for about 5 years. And he was the replacement for Skip Bayless when Skip Bayless ultimately moved on to FS1, and I think Skip and ESPN weren't able to come to a resolution, and I think it had something to do with money. So Max Kellerman replaced Skip Bayless, and Max at the time, who had a boxing background, Ivy League educated. He was he actually went to school in Columbia where he studied history, if I'm not mistaken. But his background was in boxing, right? And everyone that has heard Max Kellerman talk boxing will agree that that's really his forte. So he came on to ESPN First Take with his own flavor. He was more analytical. Max Kellerman was extremely sharp. And from time to time, he used to get the best of Stephen A. Smith. But then I noticed something happening. This was before their breakup. I said that I didn't like the way Stephen A. Smith used to speak to Max Kellerman on television. If you go some years back, we produced a lot of shows on this. I said this is very disrespectful. And I said that Stephen A. Smith was creating an environment in which other guests would come on the show and start talking crazy to Max too. And then what did we see? We started seeing Kendrick Perkins come up there talking all kind of crazy to Max Kellerman. And I used to say to myself, I'm like, wait a minute, something is going on here. I'm like, beyond the realm of professionalism and, okay, you're a boss, you're the A side of this partnership, there's a certain level of respect I believe that I need to be awarded as a man, and more importantly, as a family man. Meaning I'm a father, I have a wife, and I have kids that watch this show, and you just can't talk to me any kind of way. You can disagree with me, but you can't be talking to me like I'm your son. It's just not going to happen. And if I was in Max Kellerman's position, whether or not you're the A side of this or not, I would have to pull you to the side and say, hey, listen, man, I understand that you're going to have strong opinions and stuff like this, but you can't talk to me like this when I have my kids watching this show. You can't. I won't tolerate it. And that's for anybody. I just can't. Like, we have to draw a line here. You're not going to talk to me any kind of way. That didn't happen. And then we heard the news that Max Kellerman was being replaced or removed, from ESPN First Take. And that was like a bombshell. Everybody started talking about it. After that, we then were trying to figure out, well, what happened? We subsequently found out that Stephen A. Smith wanted Max Kellerman gone because he went on different shows like, Hot 97. I think he went on The Breakfast Club. He went on different shows where he basically said that he made it clear to the bosses, and he had been making it clear to his bosses for some time now, that he did not want to continue to work with Max Kellerman. He made this crystal clear. And a lot of us thought that was very cold. That was a very cold move, but in Stephen A. Smith's position, he's like, I'm going to tell you like it is, and it is what it is. You don't have to deal with it. I'm not going to come up here and lie to you. It was getting boring, and I didn't want to work. That was Stephen A. Smith's position. It was very cold about it. Very, very cold about it. So what happened? Max Kellerman ultimately got his own show on ESPN called This Just In, and then recently ESPN had all of those firings, and Max Kellerman was amongst the group of people that got fired. So what happened? Stephen A. Smith, about a week or so ago, went on the Joe Budden podcast. And during his visit, he talked about Shannon Sharpe and him being pushed out from FS1. He talked about a range of other things. And then they brought up the question about his time with Max Kellerman. And when Stephen A. Smith started to talk, I just couldn't believe that he was saying this type of thing about Max Kellerman, knowing that the guy just got fired and he's looking for another job, and you're out here saying this. So what we want to do is want to play exactly what Stephen A. Smith had to say to Joe Budden and his crew about Max Kellerman, and then we're going to come back and continue on the show. Take a listen to what Stephen A. Smith had to say here.
What do you say to the people say they saw the tension between you and Max developing on air before his departure from the show. Did you hear any of that?
I heard some of it. I would take full responsibility for that. That's totally my fault.
Okay.
And the reason why it was my fault, because I didn't like working with him, man. It's just that damn simple. I didn't like it. I thought the show was stale. I thought that we had flatlined when it came to the public at large. And I'm trying to win. I mean, I didn't want to go from number 1 to number 2 when Skip left. That's not what I wasn't having that. That was not going to happen.
Did anything in the numbers say that you might have been headed that way?
No, but to me it did.
Creatively?
To me it did, not just creatively, but the consistency of the number.
Got it.
In other words, it wasn't going this way.
Yeah.
It was just there.
Absolutely.
And so that's what I was feeling. And it was like, listen, I had mad respect from him from the standpoint that white dude, highly intelligent, Ivy League educated from Columbia, smart as a whip, can talk his ass off, can talk about anything. And I get all of that. But you weren't an athlete and you weren't a journalist. And the absence of the two components left people wondering, why should we listen to you? Okay, well, you might have had that figured out on Sports Nation, or you might have had that figured out on another show. But on this show, if you looked at the content emanating in the social stratosphere, meaning YouTube and other components that you use to measure one's cachet, Q ratings, focus groups, all of these different things, it was like I was damn near doing the show by myself because we were oceans apart in terms of cachet. Well, how are you oceans apart from me if you sitting right across from me 5 days a week for the whole 2 hours? Because one of us is resonating and one of us is not in that platform. And so for me, I was like, look, this is what it is. And we had a number of conversations, one-on-one, many, many times. I know this audience. I know what they're looking for. I know what they need, et cetera, et cetera. At some point, you're going to do what you need to do or you don't. And if you don't do what you need to do, I'm going to get somebody who will.
So you heard what Stephen A. Smith had to say there. Let me first of all tell you why I believe that what he did was extremely grimy. And it was just, I mean, it was terrible. Stephen A. Smith recently went on the same Joe Budden podcast where he said that he was talking about how Shannon Sharpe was pushed out of FS1. And he said that given the fact that he has so much clout and he has the #1 morning show, that if Stephen A. Smith and someone of his caliber basically puts it out there that I'm interested in this type of personality, then it will cause other people to begin to take a second look at Shannon Sharpe. And he said, if I don't show interest in a particular person, then people within the industry are going to say, what, Stephen A. Smith doesn't want to work with him. So if he doesn't want to work with him, clearly there must be something wrong. So why would we want to work with him? That's what Stephen A. Smith said. Knowing all of that, he still went on and said this about Max Kellerman, who is without a job, at least to the best of my knowledge. That's the first part I couldn't believe. But let me tell you guys where I think some of this is coming from, and it's a place where a lot of people think it's coming from. Let me just quickly refresh your memory. About 3 years ago, or 2+ years ago, there was a situation occurring with Colin Kaepernick. Colin Kaepernick was trying to make his return to the NFL. And there was a lot of controversy around it because Colin Kaepernick wanted to come with his own people to practice. He wanted to come with cameras. The NFL was against it. There was this big thing about Colin Kaepernick. And one day, they were discussing this on ESPN First Take. And on that segment, you had Stephen A. Smith, you had Max Kellerman, and you had the guest Terrell Owens on there. And essentially what they were discussing was, just to give you guys the backdrop, they were talking about why is Colin Kaepernick so reluctant to speak publicly and why is everyone speaking on his behalf. During that conversation, Max Kellerman was supporting Colin Kaepernick and Terrell Owens was supporting Colin Kaepernick. And then Stephen A. Smith started talking, and then at one point during that conversation, that dialogue, Terrell Owens says to Stephen A. Smith, it's almost as if Max Kellerman is blacker than you. And that completely sets Stephen A. Smith off. So for those of you who don't remember that happening, I want to play that exchange for you now. And I want you guys to take a listen to it there. Take a listen to that exchange there.
Everybody speaking up on behalf of Colin Kaepernick, but Colin Kaepernick. You the one person that don't have anything to say. You step aside while brothers and sisters who know that you were right to want to address police brutality, who know that you were right to want to address racial oppression, who know that you were right when you say that you didn't deserve to be blackballed and you didn't deserve to have your cause politicized. All of us are fighting on behalf of you, but you are the one that won't speak up for yourself. Do you have a problem with that?
Well, I think the thing is, in the black community, like I said, I'm in the streets. I hear what's going on.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
And the thing is I think, Stephen A., you have a platform. It's okay to disagree, but it was the way you were going about it. It was almost like you were attacking him. And I think the thing with Colin Kaepernick and the way that things shifted right at the doorstep of this workout is just the transparency. You alluded to the document. As that related, I mean, as I was referring to it with the document, the waiver, again, like I said, when you insert language into something that's not standard, then obviously you have to take time to review those documents. And like I said, they weren't given adequate time to do that. And so to now insert that and then think that he was going to sign it right at the door front, then that's not fair. You giving him, if you're going to give him a fair workout, then give him a fair workout. He was allowed no media access. They were trying to dictate who his receivers were.
I have to stop you there. I have to stop you there. I am on the air right now listening to a Hall of Famer who I believe has had a multitude of opportunities to highlight unfairness that has been exacted from him. Did that stop you from accepting the challenge, knowing that you were walking into situations that were flagrantly unfair, that you were operating behind the eight ball, at a disadvantage, courtesy of a system and an entity that obviously had a lot of power and influence to compromise whatever your aspirations were? You do it, I do it. There are people that sit up there. You ain't the only one that accused me of attacking him. I would ask you to recall what I said. What I said is that I have been supporting this man. What I didn't support was you sending, not you, meaning him, sending the message that everything has to be ideal and everything has to be fair in order for me to embrace the challenge to acquire what I have been behind the scenes through my camp telling everybody I want. If you don't want to work out, that's fine. If you think it's unfair and you want, and I know, Max, you want to get in, I'm going to bring you in. Yeah. And you don't think it's fair, that's fine. And you want to get your lawyer, and your lawyer wants to stand up there and say, this waiver is an issue. We are ready to work out, but not until they alter this waiver, etc. That's different. But to not do the workout, to change locations, and then to go and give a speech to the media without taking any questions, any inquiry as to what's really going on, you are leaving others to surmise what the hell happened.
Can I answer that real quick?
Fair.
Tio, do you mind if I jump in, Tio?
Yes, before you do that, but
go ahead.
I wanted is transparency, Stephen A. And that's like I've done it. I've had incidents throughout the course of my career, and then there have been times where I've gone into interviews where I've done an hour and a half, 2 hours of an interview, and then they break down and they edit, and then you guys get on the show, and there's a panel of people, and then they break down whatever clips that they show. They're not showing the entire hour and a half or 2 hours of that interview that I've done. So what he wanted was transparency for people to see the full workout, to see the full Colin Kaepernick. Again, you mentioned obviously Max is going to get in here, and like I said, I'm in the streets. Max almost seems blacker than you, Stephen A. with his commentary.
With all due respect, my brother.
I'm just saying, dog.
Wait a minute. Wait to finish.
I'm just saying.
I'm going to check you right now. You don't cross the line.
I'm just saying.
Tell me. Wait a minute. You don't cross the line. First of all, like I said, you, Colin Kaepernick, Eric Reed, any of y'all that want to debate me in front of black people and talk about what's best for black people, name the time and place, I'll show up. I don't want to hear, what's the definition of blackness? Is there a definitive definition of blackness? Why are you giving the impression that because I don't march lockstep with every single thing that Colin Kaepernick wants? Okay, excuse me. Hold on, wait a minute.
I'm not agreeing.
Wait a minute.
I'm not agreeing with everything that Colin Kaepernick has done.
I'm not saying that.
So you heard what was said. Many people believe that it was that particular segment that made Stephen A. Smith decide, this guy got to get out of here. He has to be gone. Let's address some of the things that he said on the Joe Budden podcast, and I want to take my time with this. Let's address some of his comments. He said a few things. He said, number one, Max Kellerman doesn't have a background in sports in terms of he's not a journalist and he's not an athlete, and so therefore people will question, why do we need to listen to Max Kellerman if he doesn't have a background in sports in terms of as being an athlete or journalist? Why is anything that he's saying credible at all? That's what Stephen A. Smith said. Max Kellerman started on TV at a very young age in his life. If you go and read his biography, I'm reading here from Wikipedia, it quickly says, and I just want to quickly summarize, Kellerman's first broadcasting experience was as a teenager on a New York City public access public access television cable TV program on professional boxing called Max on Boxing. Given the medium, this show was quite simple, but nevertheless caught the attention of the boxing community, including a young Mike Tyson. In the late 1990s, after graduating Columbia University with a degree in history, Kellerman was hired as an analyst on ESPN's boxing series Friday Night Fights, where he met future radio partner Brian Kennedy. In November 2002, he was given his own show influenced by Pardon the Interruption, became the architect and original host of ESPN's Around the Horn. While the show was incredibly popular, Kellerman and ESPN could not reach an agreement for him to remain with the network, and Kellerman left the network early in 2004, to host a new show called Max on Fox Sports Net, and then basically the article goes on there. Why am I bringing this up? It shows you that Max Kellerman did not take the traditional route. He didn't. But he still found himself working for the worldwide leader in sports in ESPN. But Stephen A. Smith's point is, well, Max was not a journalist. He's not an athlete. So why should he have an opinion? Why should his opinion be taken seriously? All right, let's look at somebody else that's probably the most popular and the most successful podcaster in the world, Joe Rogan. What did Joe Rogan study in school? Well, according to the information that I was able to find, Joe Rogan was born in 1967. His hometown is in New Jersey. His family was Irish-Italian descent, but in 1985 went to Newton South High School in Massachusetts. He was a university dropout and later on did not pursue higher education. Help me figure this out. So Joe Rogan, they didn't go to school for media, communication, public speaking, and whatever it is. He has the #1 podcast in the world. So you're telling me because Joe Rogan doesn't have a background in broadcasting or a journalist, therefore nobody should be listening to Joe Rogan at all. No one should go on the show. What are we talking about here? What are we talking about? To me, it looks like Stephen A. Smith used that as a way to disqualify Max Kellerman, #1. #2, even with all of Stephen A. Smith's journalism background, he's been the one that's been prone from time to time to have a gaffe or two. With all of his journalism background, was he not the one just now that sat up there and said, he was talking to Noah Lyles, calling what the comments that he made ignorant about international competition, just to turn around later on and find out, oh, wait a minute, I was wrong about. So why didn't your journalism background serve you then? Why didn't it serve you? Max Kellerman is self-taught, like so many other people out there. There's so many people out there that go out there and do things that they didn't go to school for, and they're wildly successful. Jay-Z, so many other people do it. Look at Rihanna. Did Rihanna go to school for science or whatever it is? She owns a cosmetic brand. What are we talking about? Did Mr. Beast grow up doing a hamburger? Did he have a hamburger business? He has a successful hamburger business today. What are we talking about? This looks like a way to just disqualify the guy. And I never thought that. I never thought about Max Kellerman's background in terms of his education up until this moment. Which means that Stephen A. Smith was always looking at him and nitpicking him and saying, okay, but this guy's smart. This guy's sharp. He makes some good points, but I got to look for some flaw within him. And the flaw is he didn't go to school for journalism. What? Like, are we being for real? That's the reason? That's the best you could come up with? You have many athletes come on your show that have given ridiculous takes. But we're supposed to say that those takes are good just because they're athletes making those takes? Like, really, this is what we're supposed to do? I thought that was pretty low, man. He said I was basically carrying the show by myself. I was going out there and looking at my popularity ratings, looking at focus groups, and I was finding out that I was rating higher. What? Looking at YouTube metrics. What YouTube metrics? These guys were not even on YouTube. How can Stephen A. Smith be quoting YouTube when he's sitting there talking? Let me give you guys, let me see. Stephen A. Smith. Let me just prove a point to you. Stephen A. Smith show. Let me prove a point to you quickly. This guy is quoting YouTube metrics. Let me prove a point. Let me prove a point to you guys quickly here. If I go to Stephen A. Smith's channel, all right, on YouTube, his channel has 305,000 subscribers. He has 37,775,000 views. First of all, I hate to break the news to you, buddy, but the only reason you got all those subs is because you're Stephen A. Smith. It has nothing to do with the content. YouTube is pushing you guys to get more views. And these guys got the nerve to come on YouTube and insult people that actually get views organically and not being supported by the algorithm, and then turn around and say, oh, they're not qualified. Why are you here? Why are you here? You came to the independent space and you're not telling us we should leave. Why are you here? If you guys were not on television, if you guys did not have the push of ESPN, you would be doing nothing on YouTube. Hold on. Let me get this straight. You're telling me that if the Dreamerspro Show got picked up by ESPN and we could go on ESPN 2 times a week, you don't think we'd be getting a crazy amount of views too? Are you freaking kidding me? You're telling me that ESPN plays no role in the push that you're getting? What are we talking about here? But anyway, to quote Stephen A. Smith, do you know what this guy said? This is the guy talking about social media reach and all of that. He said, listen to this. He said, I account for 2 billion views a year on YouTube. ESPN has 11 billion views, 10.9 billion views. His channel has 38 million views. Where did he get 2 billion views from? Do you know what he means by 2 billion? He's counting all of the views of ESPN and then saying that I get 2 billion views. If Stephen A. Smith was getting 2 billion views a year, he would be earning $20 to $30 million a year. Why would you be working on ESPN if you're getting 2 billion views? Like, what are we talking about? These guys are just talking. Do you know what 2 billion views a year actually turns out to be in money? Do you know what that is? Let me get it right. I think, okay, if you get 100 million views, let's say you would probably be making, depending on your, no, what am I saying? You'll be making like what, $25 million a year? That's without brands. That's just AdSense money. But you're going to sit down on ESPN and be doing videos? If you could get 2 billion views, why are you working at ESPN? Why don't you go get your own thing and then get your 2 billion views? Why? These guys are just talking. They don't even understand how this business works. They have a bunch of people that work with them that show them the way. They show them everything to do, how to work the cameras, how to come up with the topics and everything, and then sit down and want to take all the credit and then bash independent creators. That was a bozo move saying that about Max Kellerman, especially knowing the fact that the guy doesn't have a job. That was foul as hell. That's just my view. Maybe some people love it. Y'all let me know. Whatever you guys think, leave your thoughts in the comment section, and we catch you guys on the next show. Peace.